Welcome to the Ticket Podcast. The Ticket Podcast is a motivational and educational podcast created to inspire people to chase their dreams and achieve their goals. We sell tickets to health, wealth, and happiness. The only question left to ask is, what's your ticket going to be? This episode of the Ticket Podcast is brought to you by the Sports Business and Leadership Association. Members of the SBLA believe that charity is a contact sport. The SBLA is a 501c3 nonprofit that provides underprivileged children unique sports experiences. You can visit the SBLA website at www.nationalsbla.com and visit the gift shop to wear your support. Today's ticket is with Matt Mika. Matt is a graduate of Adrian College and Western Michigan University. Matt was a staffer to multiple members of the United States House of Representatives and is now a Director of Government Relations at Tyson Foods. Matt is a Director of the Sports Business and Leadership Association in the D.C. area.
This is your first Lightning game?
Yeah, I've been in the stadium.
It's awesome. It's fantastic. The Caps games are pretty incredible.
Yeah, Caps are fun.
Chelsea's been to a bunch of Chelsea. So Chelsea used to be.
They won't push that chair a tiny bit your way, or push it to the right. Yeah. You slide a little right, and then have Matt slide a little bit to his right as well.
It's fine. It's on vibrate. It won't ring.
Chelsea's been to the Red Wings Stadium several times. She used to have a really good friend in college whose dad was like a little entrepreneur mogul that sold tickets all over the country. And
yeah,
a bunch of tickets to shit. It was awesome. It was a shithole, but it was awesome.
Yeah, and they have a new one called Little Caesars.
Oh, really?
It's awesome.
Wow.
Have you been to Little Caesars yet?
No.
And they got all these bars downtown Detroit now. Like awesome. It's so cool.
Y'all are good whenever, dude.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
you ready to go?
Intro and everything's recorded, so we'll cut it up when you're good.
Okay. Welcome to the Ticket Podcast. We are here with the legendary, the amazing, the incredible, the powerful Matt Mika. Matt is the president of the SBLA's Washington, D.C. chapter. He is the director of government relations for Tyson Foods. And most famously, Matt Mika was shot at the Congressional Baseball Game in 2017, which in a way showed the world who this incredible person is. I'm lucky to have him here today. So welcome to the Ticket Podcast, Matt Mika.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
So the kind of point of the podcast in a lot of ways is we're getting this collection of stories, almost like a mastermind of all these different people that work in different industries and have been very successful in life. And part of their story is that sports, in a way, was their ticket to success, a ticket to who they became in life. So just right off the gate, what is your sports background growing up in Michigan?
Sure. So grew up playing baseball, basketball, hockey, football, and got an opportunity to play baseball and football in high school, and then never thought I'd play college, and wanted to play college baseball and got recruited to play college football at a D3 school, Adrian College. Ended up playing football and baseball and did that for 4 years. Helped coach when I was there, a high school team that went on to win 3 out of the next 4 state titles when I was there. So that was a lot of fun to see, actually just coaching and then seeing. I actually get more out of coaching than I do playing now.
Oh, cool.
And just joining and seeing that. And then just ever since leaving Adrian, have played baseball, softball, hockey, golf, all. So my whole life revolves around sports. That can be a lot of tribute to my brother and my dad and my family, everything we did. We watched every Michigan game, every Red Wings game, every Tigers game, always doing that growing up. So it's a great thing.
So then you go from high school to college, obviously. You end up getting into politics. Matt was a staffer in Congress for several years prior to becoming a lobbyist. What was the segue between kind of being a sports guy in college and then getting into politics?
Sure. So I look at it the same way. It's kind of like a sporting event. Started at the state level in Lansing. I worked for 5 years there, did a bunch of campaigns. And, a campaign or a race is the same as a game. You've got an end goal. You got to figure out, you got to put a plan together. And at the end of the day, you shake hands and you move on. And I look at sports and politics the same way, that you have someone else you're battling across the line or across the field, and you got to put a game plan together, implement it. And then during the game or during the campaign or during the political, for if it's a vote, something changes and you got to adjust. You got to go back in at halftime. You got to look at the plays and talk to your coaches and talk to your team and adjust. And so I look at politics and sports as very similar, and just growing up playing sports and watching it, I use the same attitude when I go in.
Now, you've been in politics a long time. How long have you been in D.C. for?
15 years.
So you've been in the heart of American politics for at least 15 years. What have you seen as heated as it seems on the outside, as crazy sometimes, as much literal hatred between the two parties sometimes. And how have you seen sports bring people that are perceived to be enemies together in Washington, D.C.?
Sure. So I help with the Congressional Baseball Game, as you mentioned. There's also a Congressional Hockey Game. There's a Congressional Football Game, soccer, every sport. There's a game, and that just brings people together. There's a Congressional Softball Game for women. And the biggest thing is, like, I'll just talk about baseball and hockey. So baseball, we practice every day at 6 a.m. and you get out there with 20 to 30 members of Congress and staff and family and friends, and you hang out, and all you care about is baseball.
That's
Same
awesome.
thing on the hockey. This year we got to play at Cap One's arena where the Capitals play. Couldn't tell you how cool that is to be in the locker room, walk out, under the big lights. And, every Monday night we go and practice, and then we have one game that happens once a year for hockey and baseball. And you spend all this time to practice and hang out. You get to meet other staff, other lobbyists. You get to meet members of Congress. Stauber, who was a freshman member this year, used to play for the Red Wings, so it was cool to see and talk
That's
with him.
amazing. That's
So
cool.
you just get to meet all these people, and then like one of the guys I get to coach with, he was a professional punter and pitched in college in Texas. So I would never met these guys, or individuals, and so you really get to expand that. And for 1 or 2 hours a day, for 4 or 5 hours a week, you kind of put away work, you put away politics, and you get to hang out. And I will say it has brought a lot of people, closer together. You kind of mentioned politics in DC. What people see on TV is not as bad as it is. It's just, that's what sells. That's what's sexy. There's a lot of things that happen that are good, and we don't always talk about that. So this front here gives us that opportunity to talk about the good things we're doing.
What's crazy is I bet no one's ever, I've never thought about this, but how much legislation for good has come because of sports. I mean, how many relationships between Democrats and Republicans have been fostered, created, strengthened through Congressional Baseball Game, hockey game, and no one would ever know about it. But it'd be amazing. You can never quantify this, but how many bills passed because two guys, or a guy and a girl, or whatever it is, but they happen to become friends on the baseball field, and then they helped their caucuses push something through. So it's incredible.
Well, I can just say I know Congressman Steve Scalise, one of his best friends, is at Richmond, and they're both from Louisiana, but, they're from the opposite side of the aisle, but they're best friends. And there are so many cases like that. My friend, Congressman Rodney Davis from Southern Illinois, some of his best friends are Democrats on the other side. But you know what? He's the catcher. So when that person comes up to bat, he is running his mouth. Yeah. There's a lot of four-letter words he's using, but he's having fun out there. But yeah, the sports brings people together, and what it does for Congress and for any business, if you're in sales or whatnot, you find that person that thinks the same as you, cares about football, cares about baseball, and you take that into the work environment, and it's a lot easier. So like if you're whipping votes and you're like, hey, I need 218 votes, I'm going to need some Democrats. First thing you do is go to your friends that that are playing. So yeah, it does bring people.
Well, what else is amazing is even in, I know like beer league sports do get very competitive. But it's amazing what you learn about people when you're competing against them or with them. Just because I think you could learn, you can learn a lot of information subconsciously with people by playing a hockey game with them, practicing with them, seeing who shows up on time, how hard do they try, are they cheating, a lot of stuff. So I think that'd be a very natural, easy way to build trust with somebody by watching them compete against or with. Very natural way. Now, in your congressional career and at Tyson, you obviously manage a lot of people. What have you seen from the people you've managed in politics and now at Tyson's? Have you noticed a difference between people that have a sports background that don't? Have you noticed anything at all that, like I said, people that played college sports, played high school sports, have you noticed any difference in their ability to be successful professionally because of their sports background?
I would say folks that either played, middle school, high school, college, or even coached or had a family member, just understand the discipline of, hey, we have a deadline, we need to be there, or just being on time. You have a meeting, it starts at 8:00. Most athletes show up on time. And if they're late, they're going to call ahead and be like, I'm stuck in traffic. I got stuck in another meeting. I do that all the time. Things happen in any work. You might be 5 or 10 minutes late and you're late. And I always make sure I email, text, or call that office. Hey, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I hate to ruin it. But the biggest thing is how people prepare for a meeting and just being on time. If they've been in sports, especially college athletes, when practice starts at 2, you better be there at 1:30. Because you're late. Just that attitude is different. And that's a big thing. Like I walk into an office and if they find out that I played college or I see they've got a Texas A&M or a big ring on and I'm like, hey, Where'd you play at? And then the whole meeting is just 10 times easier because you've got that conversation in sports. Or you walk in and, you see Texas Tech or Michigan or Ohio State or Clemson. Just that ability to talk about it. And maybe you didn't play that same sport as them, but just having that background makes it a lot easier. It's a good icebreaker.
Yeah, it breaks the ice. Yeah. So I was at a event, a fundraiser with you last year with a current Congressman, Anthony Gonzalez, who I played football with at Ohio State. And we had a fundraiser for him at Holland tonight. And the people show up, and it was amazing how it was an icebreaker. Was you think you're in DC, you're trying to raise money for a congressional race, but every conversation I had was Ohio State football related. It was, I went to Michigan and this and that, or I went to Florida and this and that. Everyone walked in, and the first intro to everyone there, which was a lot of great people, was something to do with sports, football, Ohio State. So it's amazing how sports bring people together.
I would say it's a great thing about DC, especially in politics. You have people that come from 50 different states and all across the world that want to come and work, in probably one of the most powerful places in the world.
If not the most powerful place in the world.
Exactly. So how do people start together? You figure out what you know, and sports is that avenue. So you can talk about it. So wherever you went, whatever your alma mater is, wherever your parents played or went to school. And it's such an icebreaker. I mean, I play on 2 softball teams and a baseball team. And, half the time someone's got a TV on in the dugout because they're watching their alma mater or professional team on. And it's just great. I'll tell you, as I've gotten older, one of the best things I like doing is just coaching and sitting back and watching others play and just giving back and hanging and just talking about folks of how they got where they're at. And it really goes a lot further just with the Congressional Baseball Game. I can't tell you how many members of Congress I go in to lobby them. They don't even want to talk about why I'm there. They want to talk about, what happened last night, or, I can think of a guy, Trent Kelly. He wants to talk about Ole Miss all the time. It's always about Ole Miss football.
Yeah, I know.
So it all goes back to sports. And it's a great way to bring people together.
Well, Matt, you bring up a good point, and I just kind of wanted to hit it on. You mentioned it earlier, even with the younger kids in high school. You played at a very high level. You coached at a very high level. What are even coaching, the congressional team? What are some of the key takeaways that you're like, man, when I was playing as an athlete, I thought this, or when I'm coaching, I kind of maybe think this? Are there any differentiators in how you approach?
The biggest thing I learned, I wish I would have. So when I was a junior and senior in high school, I was the second baseman. We had another kid who was a year behind me. I should have let him play, and I moved to the outfield because I was an athlete. I could learn to play center or right field. So I do that now when I'm coaching, is like, just because someone wants to play a position or they think they should be leadoff, it's like in men's slow pitch softball. Well, you got to have someone in the 10 hole that can flip the lineup. You might be an 800 hitter. You know what? I need you on the bottom because you're going to put the ball in play. So it's finding those skills with people and getting them where they play. And one thing I've had to do, because DC is a type A town, you have a lot of people that are very, they want to get to the next job. They want to move on. We actually had to come up with my men's slow pitch softball team of coming up with a website so people could see their batting order, and whoever had the highest batting order or OPS, that's how we did the order. Right. So every week I'd go in and say 1 through 10, that's where we're going to go. So no one argues like, well, why is he batting 2 and batting 8? So it's going back to high school and college of learning, taking people's best skills and putting them in place. And same thing in the office. Right. Everyone has something to give. And when you're running an office or you have a boss, it's like working with them. It's like, well, I can help you out here. Right. Or just think, outside the box, or, hey, the game's tied with 2 seconds to go. Who's going to make the last play? Yeah. Right.
Do you just, and add on from that, because it is 2 different, I mean, you're working with, high school and collegiate athletes, and now you're working with congressional leaders. Is there a difference, or do you find a lot of similarities?
So one thing I like to say with the Congressional Baseball Game, at least on the Republican side, I've talked to some of my friends that coach on the Democrat side, is it's like coaching 8-year-olds, because we start practice at 6 a.m. and we get there at 5:30, 5:45. Roger Williams, who played in the Atlanta Braves, coached at TCU as the head coach. He's now a member of Congress from Texas. He starts right on time at 6. So, if you walk in at 6:01, you're late. But it is literally like coaching 8 and 9-year-olds, because what you teach them one day, they literally forget the next day because they are so busy. And remember, these are folks in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And we do have women that come out and play in the baseball game. It is amazing to see, a woman get up there and get a base hit, and then the whole stadium goes crazy. It's just like for that whole thing. But coaching every morning, you literally have to start over. It's just like the same thing. It's not like in high school or college where like you can move on and start doing situations and work on turning double plays or suicides or whatnot. You have to throw that all out. Right. I mean, it's like coaching little kids. It's great, but it is coaching like little kids.
Is the Congressional football game in pads?
No, it's flag.
Okay, it's flag.
And so it's the guards versus the red machine. So it's the members of Congress, Republican, Democrat versus the Capitol Police.
Oh,
And
okay.
They'll bring out NFL players like Herschel Walker's played.
Amazing.
I do it every other year in a non-campaign year. It is so much fun.
Well, let me ask you this. So when we were kids, I think if I was going to tell someone that was growing up when we were younger in college, or whatever, they said they just wanted to make money, be powerful, make a difference, I think I would say move to LA, New York City, because that's the money centers, power centers. But now I actually think if I was younger and I wanted to be powerful, make money, I would say DC is the spot to be. So I think DC carries more of an ambiance now, or intrigue, than it ever has before, with House of Cards and just everything, and the politics, and how it's 24/7 news. What kind of sports city is DC? For people that are listening who haven't been or haven't spent a lot of time in DC, what kind of sports city is DC?
So DC is great. I mean, the biggest thing is everyone loves the Redskins. Either love or hate the Redskins is a better way to do it. But you have people, again, as I mentioned earlier, that come from 50 different states and from all across the world. So when you go to a Nats game or to a Redskins game or to a Caps game or to go to a University of Maryland game, half of those folks that live in DC or the Metro DC area are going to be rooting for that home team. Yeah. So it used to be when I would go see the Red Wings play the Caps, half the stadium would be Red Wings fans. But now the Caps are a lot better. It's a difference. But if you go to a Nats game and they're playing Philly or one of the big teams or the Mets, I mean, half the stadium, and it's kind of fun because you get to see both of it. And folks like myself, like I grew up in Detroit, I'm a Nats fan, but if they're playing the Tigers, I'm going to root for my home team first. But it's not like I hate the Nats, right? I'm always going to root for them. So that's really where DC is. I mean, it is a huge sports town, not just at the professional level. You have, GW, American, Catholic, University of Virginia, Maryland, a great college system. Then you got the smaller colleges, and then you have Gonzaga High School and DeMatha, where some of the best college athletes for football and basketball then go on to play D1. So there's a huge sports presence. And then also at the high school level, you got some really good baseball teams that are in the area from some private schools. So a lot of folks that live in that area, if it's Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC, when they're raising their kids, they are playing in high octane sports that are then going on D1, D2, D3. Yeah.
So I'm a Big Ten guy. You're a Big Ten guy. The Big Ten is now in DC with Maryland. Yeah. Is it starting to feel like Big Ten or?
So 2 years ago, the Big Ten basketball tournament was there, and it was really cool to see because you're sitting with friends that are rooting for Nebraska, Michigan State, Northwestern. Yeah, now that Maryland's, I still think some of the Maryland fans still think they're in the ACC because if you touch someone, they think it's a foul. Big Ten is no blood, no foul. I mean, that's how we grew up.
That's right. Yeah.
Same thing with the Big 12. A lot of friends that are from Texas, Kansas, it's like, okay, it's a different type of basketball. Right. I think they have embraced the Big Ten, having the tournament there 2 years ago. And I'll tell you what, going to Maryland and just sitting with, half the stadium being either Michigan State, or my friends that are from Nebraska, just going and sitting there. It's just fun.
Cool.
It's a good thing to do.
So let's jump into kind of what made you famous in a lot of ways, which is the shooting. June 14th, 2017, 7 a.m. You are in practice in the first base dugout, and shots ring out. Over 100 shots are fired. Several people get hit. You get hit twice, once in the chest, once in the arm. Just tell us about that day.
Sure. I'll start from the morning. So I got up 5:20, grabbed my stuff, grabbed my coffee at the field. It's the last practice before the game. It's more of a kind of a walkthrough. If anybody's, you got to basically a playoff game or like a Super Bowl, because we practice for 3 months for one game. It's not like we get a lot of games in. And so we go through our normal, we do warm up. We go through infield, outfield. I hit outfield balls to the outfielders, and then I work with the second base shortstop on turning double plays. And then we go into batting practice, and I'm usually one of the first pitchers. We have a couple of us. There's 4 of us that pitch. 3 of the guys pitch D1. I pitched a little bit in D3, so we can kind of hum it along a little bit and get these guys to see 70 and 80 mile an hour fastballs. Democrats for the last couple of years, Cedric Richmond from New Orleans pitched D2, and he can still throw 75, 80, and he has a curveball, and he's actually found a knuckleball after all these years because his arm's starting to hurt. So we just try to imitate that, get that. And then my biggest thing is get them to see pitches inside, outside, up and down. So I get done, go in the dugout, get some water, put all my glove stuff down, and then I'm standing literally right outside the dugout, between the end of the dugout and home plate. And I'm standing next to Ryan Thompson, who organizes this whole event. Now, Ryan's background, he was a Marine and now works for a member of Congress from Texas. And we heard a loud bang. And you have to remember, in the morning, there's a coffee shop across the street. There's a CVS, there's a YMCA, there's a dog park. And this is also over in Alexandria where they keep all of the stuff to cut the grass, lawn service for the city. So there's stuff being pulled out and there's a lot of construction going on. So we just thought like it was a loud bang. The second one, everyone yelled gun because it sounded like a high power rifle. And that's when everyone, split out and went their own ways. And remember, there's about 40 people on the field. You got about 20, 25 members, 10 or 15 staff. You've got wives, girlfriends, kids. So about 40 people total, plus the dog park and the coffee shop and the YMCA. At some point, I'd made a turn to go left to right inside. I got hit in the right side out the chest, missed my heart by less than half an inch. My whole thought process, and I'll blame my father for this, is I was thinking military. I ran over to the two Capitol Police dignitary, David Bailey and Crystal Griner. They were there protecting Steve Scalise that day, and they had guns on them. So my thought process is I can either help them find the shooter, maybe they have another gun, or maybe I can get them ammo. I wanted to go help them out just because that was the first thing. And maybe it's too many movies, but again, I'll blame my father for that, for his years of military service. So at some point I got hit, and I didn't know I was hit until I looked down and my chest was really hot, like it was on fire, like rubber burning. And then some people that were behind some trees and sheds said, "Hey, Micah, get down." At some point, running outside the gate, I dropped to a knee. They saw me, got over, went down. And then when I was on the ground, I put my heads above my arms, up on my head so I could breathe, because my right lung was collapsed because the bullet went through it. And so I went like this. And when I was on the ground, and this is something everybody, if you're ever in a shooting or in a trauma situation, don't go by an SUV. There's about 9 inches of clearance. One of the bullets went underneath and hit me in the right arm and severed my nerve. But luckily I had it up, because that second bullet would have been a neck shot, a chest shot, or head shot. It could have been fatal. Wow. And there's so many miracles that happened that day. For as bad as that 10 to 15 minutes was, they said it was 6 minutes according to the FBI report. That's when the first call went at 7 or 9, but I'm guessing it was probably 10 or 15. Like you said, over 100 shots. Everything that happened after was a miracle. The fact that all these folks in Alexandria and DC, DMV area were trained by my brother's college roommate who works for the Secret Service. The fact that they had a special type of wrap that my paramedic Chad Shade put on me. My trauma doctor said I would have never survived. And the fact that Chad put me on the first EMS and didn't wait for the helicopter. And then the fact that I got from Alexandria, Virginia to GW Medical, which is a trauma 1 center. And so is MedStar, where Steve Scalise went, and Griner, that saved my life. So everyone making the right decisions at the right time. And then just being able to get 15 minutes to go 4 miles in DC traffic at 7:30 in the morning is amazing.
It's impossible.
So like everything that happened afterward is a miracle. It was by the grace of God. I can't thank people enough. I mean, the fact that David and Crystal were there, if Scalise would have left 5 minutes earlier, there wouldn't have been any, return fire until the police showed up. The fact that the night before, the guy that runs the facility looked over on the third base side and said, "Why is the gate open over there?" Well, that's where the guy started shooting, was just behind the third base dugout. Well, he locked the gate the night before. Wow. I mean, he easily could have walked on. And also there's the bullpen was over there, and no one was throwing in the bullpen because we were saving all of our arms of our pitchers. So he easily could have walked up and shot those folks. And then the fact that we were always on the first base side, we weren't on the third base side. So there's probably 15 to 20 different miracles that happened that day to get me to where I was. And then if you talk to my trauma doctor, just how I was in shape, all the sports I played my whole life. If it had been anybody else that was on the field that day, I'm not sure they would have made it. Yeah. But again, my 2 biggest heroes are David and Crystal, and David's one of my best friends now.
Didn't you say that? So maybe it is David. Didn't you tell me recently that the kind of the trauma ER person that met you had military service, and they had helped soldiers who were hit, and part of the miracle was that person knew exactly how to help you with a wound like that because he had military service.
Yeah. So, and I'm actually now on this board called CTEC, and what it is, it's military trauma training for police, fire, EMS, and civilians for a situation like this. And one thing we want to do is train all the coaches from the Republican and Democrat team, and anybody else who wants it, to go through. It's a 3-hour course. But what they do is they set standards. And because Chad had that training from CTEC, and then also more importantly, Congressman Steve Scalise, who was hit. So I was bleeding out. He was bleeding in. He didn't have an exit wound. But Colonel Winstrup, Major Colonel Winstrup, he's a surgeon in the military and was in Iraq and Afghanistan and had seen the same injury. So he knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And he actually lost that soldier in theater. And because he put that tourniquet on and was using a belt and someone's t-shirt, and he knew there was a med kit in the back of the SUV, he was able to keep Steve stable so that he could get on the helicopter and then get to the hospital. And without that, Steve would have probably bled out.
It's amazing. So it's amazing.
But all this training has helped all these people.
But it's amazing because Steve Scalise almost dies. But Steve Scalise, in a way, saved tons of people that day.
Right.
Because if he wasn't there,
it would have been 20 to 30 massacre, easy.
And so the shooting, so no one shot back. That the EMT kid that saved your life would not have been there if he hadn't been there.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So just to start, and then, the fact that, 2 blocks down the road was the firehouse, and some lady that was running by heard the shots and ran all the way down and got there. And then they pulled up, and this is another thing. So they are trained now to not wait till they all clear. They start getting to the first person they can. And then the way it works is they survey the scene and they go to the who's ever most critical first. So if you twisted an ankle or you're able to walk, it's like, okay, you're good. We're going to get you stable. But if there are people like myself and Steve and I should have died that day. I mean, it's just, it's that easy. But the fact that they were trained properly, that everything happened and that Steve was there and that Dave and Crystal, and 5 people were shot that day. Crystal was shot in the ankle. I mean, she's still trying to recover. She played college basketball, so she can tell you her whole story about how playing college sports got to her. David played, college football at NCC down in North Carolina at an HBCU. So his whole life revolved around that, and he still does that today. And then Steve got shot, and then Zack Barth, who helps with the team, he got shot in the calf. The bullet went right through him. Yeah. My buddy Wes was running right next to him, and someone said they saw him clear a 20-foot fence in 2 seconds. Wow. Because of how your adrenaline just kicks in. I didn't know I was shot until someone told me to look down.
There's so many layers to this.
Yeah.
I don't think in a podcast we could ever even do justice to this day, to what you've done and what you've overcome, Matt. And it's going to be obviously incredibly resonate with everyone who's listening and hears your story or has ever read your story. You mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it back up, you didn't even realize you were shot until you felt the heat or what that was, and that was your adrenaline. I mean, and I don't know if you know what you were thinking, but what was in your head at that time? I mean, once you realized, man, my chest is hot, walk it just from that point, maybe, the thought process in your what was that?
Yeah, I was still trying to get over to Dave and Crystal and get over by the SUV and just get behind something. And I've talked to a couple other people that were there that day. And this is something for anybody who's in a trauma situation. Just because you're not shot, you still go through that ordeal. Some of my good friends, Brian and Wes, I've known Brian for 20 years. We played college baseball against each other back in Michigan, and now we hang out here in DC. So it's a small world. And we play baseball together now in a 30 and over league. But just that thought process to get to safety, get to somewhere where you're not in the way. And just, I've talked to David and Crystal about this. David was trying to come on the field to keep the shooter over there. And David said that the bullet that hit me was probably meant for him. So if David would have been hit, it's a game changer. David got hit twice. His phone got hit, which scattered. And then he got shrapnel in his leg from a bullet that blew up.
Did the bullet that hit the phone, did it do any damage to him? Or did
no.
Did the phone save?
The phone saved his life. So the fact that he had his, he has 2 phones. He has a work phone and a personal phone. And the fact that his phone was on his hip
saved
his
him
life.
And a lot of other people.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So, it goes back to all these little things that happen, that you just never think about. Yeah. One thing that happened to me that I always think about, and I've talked to a lot of high schools and college. I went back to my alma mater. I've talked to a lot of football programs, basketball and hockey. It's you never know in life when you're going to get the next day or the next play or the next shift or the next inning. So when you're on the field, use it, be in the moment, love it, because you might break an ankle, or something, or something may happen in life where you're never going to play sports again. So for people that love sports and that are all into it or young kids, it's enjoy it, because you never know if you can get the next opportunity.
Yeah.
That's something that, I've met Jason Worth through this. He was going through rehab. He came to the hospital. He had a boot, and he's like, man, you guys were on the baseball diamond. You're on the sandlot. That's supposed to be a sanctuary. Yeah. It's supposed to be a safe place. And now that's been taken away, not only from you, but from people across the U.S. who now think, I talk to my friends that are coaches. I was like, you got to keep your head on a swivel. You got to know who's around, because I'd seen that guy at the field. Yeah. Either the day before or the week before. And we all recognize him, but it's a community park. People are hanging out who didn't think anything different. Yeah. So you take a different approach to life now when you go through something like this.
So the day of the event, the shooting happens, and then you're in the hospital, you're in the EMT, obviously, you're in the ambulance, you're in the hospital, and you come through. If you could shed any light on, because obviously people find interesting what they don't know, and most people, including myself, have never experienced a near-death experience. Can you give any information or anything you say about where you were psychologically, where you were emotionally, what was going through your head, what was that like?
So the first 5 days I was ICU, and I was on some pretty heady drugs, ketamine. I don't remember much of it.
Yeah.
All I know is that ketamine made me see dragons come out of the walls. So I watched too much Game of Thrones. So that's when it started pulling me off. And then we spent another 5 days. I literally had to talk with my dad and my stepmom and my brother and sister and my friends and my girlfriend at the time of like what happened over those 5 days. And I ask them all the time. I was like, I don't remember. And I want to remember. So I have to piece it all together. Once they came out, the biggest thing was like, I just wanted to get up and go to the bathroom. I wanted to walk around. And you know, when you're in a hospital bed for 5 days not moving, your body just stops. And I can see now, like when a professional athlete or college athlete screws up their knee or their shoulder, I mean, it takes a long time to recoup.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, the biggest thing was like once I got home was just like I wanted to go for a walk. I want to walk around the block and then 2 blocks. And then I wanted to walk like a mile. And I will say psychologically, the best thing I did was there was 5 of us. We went back to the park exactly 4 weeks to the day. So a month later, and we all went through what we went through that day and talked about it. We were out there for probably 2 or 3 hours. And then Ryan Thompson, the Marine I was standing next to, he got the full breakdown from the FBI and Capitol Police. And I got a briefing a little bit later once they finished their report. But what he told us, where the bullets were, where they were, the holes, the change, you know, in the fence that were cut, you know, the fact there's still some bullets in the wood. That was the best therapy for me. I mean, just knowing and just knowing everyone was safe. I mean, my friends, Wes and Brian, they were not good. And I talked to both their girlfriend and wives until they saw me in the hospital. You know, a lot of people, because they just couldn't, because of the situation, because of the politics of this, because of security. I mean, no one was allowed up. I was under an alias. Yeah. The hospital's like, no, he's not here. You couldn't get on the floor. You had to have a special code. You had to know a lot of things. And then just keeping people away, because this is one thing I've learned. I've talked to some other folks that have survived similar. Christina Anderson, she survived Virginia Tech. She was one of the 3 people that got out of the classroom. And then a guy, Nick Robine, who I connected with, another sports guy. He coaches at UNLV. He's one of the assistant coaches. He was at the Vegas shooting, got shot in the chest. Very similar. So the 3 of us have kind of started this little group. But just talking with them, it's like, it's okay to say no. But if your body doesn't recover in your mind, you're not going to be a good place for other people.
Yeah. So specifically, sports, I know, actually did save your life, because if you were not in as good a shape as you were in, you would not have survived. But how did the lessons you learned from playing sports in high school and college help you overcome the adversity, the extreme adversity of being shot, almost dying? How was sports your ticket to recovery, back to the same? I mean, I didn't know Matt. I never met Matt before the shooting. I met Matt after the shooting, and I love Matt. So I think you're fantastic. I don't know if this is the same, better, or worse version of Matt, but I know it's a great version of Matt. So how has sports helped you overcome the adversity of being shot, almost dying, and being back to who you are today?
So the biggest thing was doing PT and OT, physical training, and optical, or doing my hand. Because I got shot in the left hand and it hit the nerve, I couldn't use my hand for a while. So just going and having to do that. And I knew what it would take to get there. And then working with my physical therapist and then my trainers of, hey, I played college football. I've been hurt before. I know what it's like. And I think for anybody who's an athlete that has to go through rehabbing any type of their body, the physical side of that was good. The mental side was like, I'm going back out there next year. Like everyone's like, are you going to go back to the field? I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to show, like, you know, one thing we never do. And I've talked to a lot of people, we never talk about the shooter. I don't want to give that person any time of day. Yeah. And it's all about all of us that survived and moving forward and are doing better with life. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I take life a little bit more serious now. You know, it's about being in the moment, loving the moment, enjoying the moment. You know, one of the biggest things I've learned is when you're with family and friends or just out and about, just turn your phone off, or I just put it in airplane mode, because you never know when you get that opportunity again. Yeah. Especially with sports, you know, going to a game, you know, this could be the greatest game ever. You never know. Yeah. You know, one of the things we did in DC is we took 12 inner city kids to a hockey game, and one had ever been to a hockey game before. That game went to overtime and a shootout. I mean, what was the opportunity that like we would have a great game like that, and
great seats?
And the Caps came through with lower level, and the fact that they wanted to have more hitting and fighting. I was trying to explain they don't fight anymore in hockey, but they loved it. So those are the type of moments that you really think about.
Matt, I was going to say you kind of hit on it, and I'm going to ask you maybe just dive a little bit deeper. You woke up, in that day. What was your approach to life? Like I guess almost like your motto. Like I mean, I feel like David, you probably do too, where it's like you kind of have a motto you live by and approach every day. What was that? The day of the shoot before this happened, and then what is it now?
So there's so many really cool things, but my trauma surgeon, Libby Schroeder, up on her wall is "Clear eyes, full hearts can't lose" from Friday Night Lights. Absolutely. And that I've always lived by that since that movie came out and that show. And I think it's a great thing for any athlete or any person. It's like, you have to have a clear mind. You have to be ready. You have to be prepped. And the fact that she had that, and like, that's what I live by, was just absolutely amazing. Another thing, the surgeon that worked on my hand and arm went to the University of Pitt for his ortho degree. That's where my parents met, and they went to school. That's cool. I mean, there's so many cool little things and miracles that happen along the way that without those, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today or the person I am. And just the fact of some of those coaches that were on the field with me that day and those members of Congress, they now become some of my best friends. Rodney Davis, I can call and talk to at any time. Yeah, he's a member of Congress from Illinois, but we're friends. Yeah. And he talks about that all the time. He's like, look, this thing happened, but it brought all of us closer together. We love each other. We would do anything for each other. I mean, I talk with Jason Worth daily. That's awesome. And we both talk about, because of a bad thing, we would have been friends before, but this brought us together. So it's those little things that you just never know, that if you can just live with them and go with them and be in the moment.
So, and sorry, one more. And I have, being from, academy, and then, have worked with folks that have been, in the heat of things over, over in the Middle East and beyond. Matt, has this changed, your outlook in terms of even just your day-to-day life? Going through something like this, of such significance, of literally life, death. Like, what is it going to take for me to survive, to help these others, to protect? Like, that's such an extreme at such a different level. Has that made you, I guess, reflect on your day-to-day? And is it tough to, in your daily life, your daily, you might just be pushing paperwork, or you're talking to someone else in, in DC, Congress, how do you take an experience like that where you're like, man, talk about life and that's what matters, and coming from, I guess, such an extreme situation like that, and now you're kind of back into a regular life, some would say. Has that been an adjustment?
Yeah, so I'd call it a new normal. I mean, I'm going to live with this the rest of my life. One thing that happened is that people are like, how are you? I'm like, dude, I'm upright. That's all you need to know. Right. Like, I'm alive. That's more important than anything. Yeah, I've got some little things, like I had 3 broken ribs, a cracked rib, and a floating rib. So when I run, or it's really hot or cold, or like I was swimming today, they hurt. But you know what? I can live with it. That's life. For me, I just wanted to give back after a while. And that's where sports came in, and that's where SBLA, and I'm glad I got to meet you guys, David, especially you, like getting it all started, getting a chapter in DC, because there's so many opportunities in DC, and just allowing kids to do that. I grew up where I was blessed to be able to play baseball and go to camps and enjoy life, and go to Tigers games and go to Pirates game and go to Heinz Field and watch the Steelers play and just do things with my family and friends. And a lot of kids don't get that opportunity. It could be in inner city, or it could be in rural America. Kids don't get that opportunity to go to a big college stadium or to a pro game. So to me, I just wanted to give back, because sports, since I was 3 and 4 years old, and my brother beating me up and playing basketball or, touch football in the front yard, that's who I've been. And, you'd get up Saturday and watch College Game Day and then watch your team play. Oh, yeah, exactly. So, for me, that's kind of where the change came, is like just those little moments. And I don't sweat the small things anymore, like arguing over dinner, or if someone's 15 minutes late, like to the bar or to an event, it's like, life happens. Yeah. And that's what I tell people, like, you just never know.
So I'll ask you one more serious question, then kind of go through some fun questions. I mean, I follow the news very closely, I follow politics very closely, and I can't think of a mass shooting that has been less politicized than this one. I don't even know the shooter's name. I mean, I know the shooter's name. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, but I do know the shooter's name from Columbine, from Parkland. I know all these shooters' names. So what was done collectively as a group of victims that helped not politicize this and have it be something that actually turned into something for good, as opposed to all the negative things that come out of this?
Yeah.
Typically.
So just one thing, we all call ourselves survivors, and that's the big thing. We never use the term victim. So everyone's a survivor, even folks that weren't shot. Everyone's there. Right. I think the biggest thing is, as you've seen, as these shootings, some of the news has made it about the shooter and not the people that are either killed or survive.
Right.
And I think since our shooting, and then you had the Vegas shooting, you had the shooting in Texas at the church, and then you had what happened in Pittsburgh with the synagogue. Right. No one knows who those shooters are anymore because we don't talk about it. And it's up to the people that are there. I don't
know the Pittsburgh guy's name either.
Because it's all about what happened in the community and folks coming together. I mean, look in Pittsburgh, what happened. It was beautiful. You had a Muslim community go and raise fundraise for the Jewish church. I mean, that's just awesome that you wouldn't see that. And unfortunately, it took a bad incident like that to bring people together. So yeah, I think that's one thing that's changed. I think allowing the people that are there control how the media talks about an incident, and then just talking about the good things that happen. For as bad as I said, that 10 to 15 minutes, everything that's happened afterwards, I can't. It's a blessing. It's a miracle. I should probably write a book about just the miracles, but we'll see what happens.
Well,
I'm sure we could add it up.
So it's funny you say 33 because Jesus Christ was 33 when he died, and that's such a big number.
Oh man, now we're going deep here.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny talking about how just live life to the moment, and when enough is enough. We have a beautiful life. We have a beautiful world. I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast yesterday, and he had a physicist, a world-renowned physicist on, and the guy was saying our human bodies are made of carbon that came from multiple stars that exploded and then created our Earth, created our bodies. What more do you want? This is a miracle. Everything is a miracle. This is amazing. So some fun questions. What movie motivates Matt Mika to both in the gym and then just to kick butt at work?
That's a good one. Well, my favorite movie of all time is Top Gun. But
me too.
But I will say, For the Love of the Game is just a great baseball movie.
Yeah. You know what I watched the other day with my little kids was A League of Their Own. That is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks is hilarious. The women are amazing.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, the sister who always lost to the other sister beats her.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was amazing. All right, the song that gets you going in the gym and gets you going at work.
Dreams by Van Halen. Also because of the video of the Blue Angels.
Nice. Okay.
When I was really young, I got to sit in a Blue Angel.
Nice. That's cool. So you've met Donald Trump. What is Donald Trump like in person?
Donald Trump is a very nice person, and he's just like any politician. What you see on TV is not always the person behind the scene. I got to meet him 2 times, and just chatting with him. It wasn't a very long time, but it was sincere. He had a good conversation, and it was 5 or 10 minutes. And so through my career, I've met 5 presidents. So it's pretty cool that over this 20-year span, I've got to meet.
What other presidents have you met?
Bill Clinton.
There's probably 5 alive, right? So it's probably
yeah,
I know. Yeah.
Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, both Bushes, and Trump.
So the only one you haven't met is Carter.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. So was there any kind of aura amongst those men that you could feel or?
George W. Bush, I had a friend who worked advance for the White House. And so anytime he would travel to Michigan, I would always work those events. And I keep being the guy before he went on stage, and we would just talk baseball.
He's a baseball fan.
Yeah, because he owned the Rangers. So we would just talk baseball. And so for 3 or 4 minutes, we talk, and then you'd see him walk on stage or whatever he was going to do, and he completely change and carry on. And that's something about you talk to a lot of members of Congress, and you're seeing this more and more, both men and female, and Democrats and Republicans that came from a sports background. Jansen, who was a lineman at Michigan, he's no longer a member of Congress, but all these folks either played college or coached, and they take that same persona of how they were and using sports to where they're at.
That's awesome.
And and like I said earlier, it's a great icebreaker when you walk into an office. You see something on the wall or a ball.
If you could tell us a funny story some kind of funny story from a politician most people will know. Because you know everybody.
Oh, funny story.
I feel like Rand Paul is a funny story everywhere he goes.
So I'm trying to think ones that are like suitable for a podcast that aren't R-rated.
Well, I feel like okay, so yeah. Okay, let me change the question. Let's get a PG-13 funny story about a politician that everyone would know.
So there's a politician from Kansas. His name's Roger Marshall. He's a doctor, and he got elected, I want to say 2 or 3 terms ago. He might be in his 3rd or 4th term. And he's an okay athlete, right? He can throw the ball. But, man, he is the best broadcaster I've ever seen. So he would, at all of our practices, get on his phone and do these YouTubes and put them up, and he makes fun of everybody. Like, we would get, he makes fun of Scalise. He'd make fun of the speaker. McCarthy would come out there. Boehner would be out there at practice, and he would just rip them apart. And no one seemed to care because it was on a baseball diamond. Yeah. So, like, you can actually go on YouTube and pull up Roger Marshall, Congressman, and do baseball, and you will get 4 or 5 hours of YouTube that is pretty funny. And you don't have to know anything about politics. He's a guy's just hilarious.
Is it like Bob Uecker?
It's just, yeah. I mean, he should just do play-by-play. And like everyone who comes up, he makes fun of him. I mean, he makes fun of all the pitchers awesome. and like, Micah, you can't throw, or way to bounce it, I will say a funny story. So at the game I couldn't go to because I was clearly in the ICU, David Bailey, really good athlete, played college football, bounced the ball to the plate for throwing out the first pitch. Now, granted, he did just get shot the day before, but every time
that's not an excuse. That is not an excuse.
Every time I see him, I'm like, dude, you bounced the ball. You can't bounce the ball when you're in front of 25,000 people. And I will say, the DC community and our folks, that day after the shooting, they sold 25,000 tickets to Nat Stadium for a congressional baseball game. That, remember, this is like 8 and 9-year-olds. This is not the really good baseball. That game sold out more than 4 other major league parks that day.
Yeah, more than the Rays.
So
yeah. Okay. So tell us one of your best House of Cards type stories. Some crazy stuff. Give us an inside look.
So some of the coolest things happens in committee or in closed rooms. I'll tell you 2. So one, when I was at the state level, there was a big fight between the bankers and credit unions. And I was there with my boss, who was the chair of the subcommittee of the banking subcommittee in the House. And just having them go back and forth, and I just see my boss writing things down. I'm like, okay, he puts a paper in front of him and he walks out. And he says, give me 5 minutes. Both groups came out. He literally wrote a deal. They'd been arguing for weeks and hours. And I can't remember exactly what the legislation was, but he'd written down 4 different points, handed it, done, and walked out. Wow. So cut a deal between 2 groups that really don't like each other, credit unions and banks, especially when it comes to regulatory issues. This is all at the state level. And cut up that bill passed. See, ball, I'm thinking sports all the time. That bill passed in like 2 weeks. Went through the House, went through the Senate. Governor of Michigan signed it.
Sounds like an Ari Gold type story.
It's very.
I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. You're going to do this and this. Yeah.
I will say.
Or Jerry Maguire when he goes, this is what he's going to do. We can't afford that. He goes, winning's not cheap. Yeah.
I'll say at the federal level, it's very similar. And this has to do with just individuals and people. And again, some of my best friends I've met played college football. I have 2 guys that played football at Kansas State. And so we're sitting, and for anybody that knows, the Farm Bill gets passed every 5 years. It has 12 titles. It's about 12 to 1,500 pages. And you have amendments that go through, you go through subcommittee and full committee. And the night before, we're all writing amendments, and we had like 100 different amendments written. But it was great because we had 5 to 10 people sitting around a table kind of like this, Republicans and Democrat staffers, and we were coming up with ways to help each other out. So if my boss offered this, you do that. And so we had it all ready. And then we're like, well, who don't we like on committee? Like, who's the staffers we don't like? So we'd come up with amendments for them in 2nd degree and 3rd degree. And we literally walked in the next day and handed them. And there was like I said, 5 or 6 of us. And we gave them to the clerk. And like, what is this? It's like, oh, we were up late last night. We might have had a couple cases of beer and Suburban, but we wrote some really good amendments. And it was fun because you get to meet people at another level. It's late at night. You're working hard. People in their late 20s, early 30s, And again, that whole thing going back to sports, I would say almost everyone on the table played college. The females too, like the one girl, she played lacrosse at Georgetown. But the fact that they came from that, and now in a world where you're trying to one up each other, but we all came together that night, and it's like, okay, I got your back if you got my back. It's kind of like I got my teammate.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the coolest things to see, and that was back in 2008, just to see that happen, and then the process, and then that. I will keep that person's name out. That staffer we didn't like we really screwed her. So we did everything we could to take her down. So but those are kind of the inside baseball.
That's cool.
kind of things.
So last question. What is your message to a young person, a high school student, a college student who has either given up hope or lost confidence in themselves? What is your message to those people that might see this podcast?
I'd say one, kind of we said earlier, live in the moment, be in the moment, love the moment. You never know what the next day is going to be. And for as bad as I was, I'm not supposed to be here right now. People ask me how I'm doing. I'm upright. You can always get better at something. You can always improve. Just take it, enjoy it, be in it. And, there's always an opportunity to get better at something. I've played baseball since I was 4. I'm really trying to get a better hockey and golfer now. And I just want to do something different. Or in my field at work, I've changed some of the issues I've worked on. I became an expert in ag and environment issues. Now I'm working on more in transportation and trade. So it's learning something new, and it gets you up in the morning, gets you going, gets you something to kind of look for. So
very cool, man. That is Matt Mika's Ticket Podcast. We are both on the board of directors of the Sports Business Leadership Association. We ask you to donate, give time, give your heart, live in the moment. www.nationalsbla.com. Go look at the website, watch our videos, look at our clips, donate, kick butt.
Absolutely.
We're out.
And that's today's ticket. Remember, where you're at today is not going to be where you end up. We hope podcasts like this help you find your ticket to health, wealth, and happiness. If you like what you heard, punch your ticket with our team and follow us at Ticket Productions. Until next time, get up, get moving, and make a positive impact on today.